Hello everyone, welcome back to another Teaching Tuesday. For today, I'll be talking about exploitation. This is actually a two-part series and focuses more on the child and youth aspect of it and who gets affected by it, the stages, and we'll also dive into a few types of exploitation. So, what is exploitation? Exploitation is the exchange of sex for food, shelter, drugs, alcohol, money, and or approval. So when a child or youth is sexually exploited, he or she is abused on all levels. So when I was talking about earlier that there's different types of exploitation, we will also be covering that. There is emotional, so that's when behaviors such as yelling, insulting, swearing, threatening to hurt your partner or themselves, belittling as well, either alone or in public, or scaring someone. There's sexual exploitation, so that's any unwanted sexual touching, using force or pressure to get an individual to engage in sexual activity. The next one is psychological exploitation. That's where one individual mentally manipulates the other to get what they want. So you're playing mind games, you're gaslighting. Next is physical exploitation. That's including shoving, slapping, choking, punching, kicking, biting, hair pulling, and or use of a weapon. There's financial exploitation as well. That's when one partner has control over the money and does not allow equal access or equal say in spending decisions. So it's important to remember that a child or youth or someone under the age of 18 who trades sex for money or goods is not a prostitute, but is actually a sexually exploited child or youth. And sexual exploitation within the sex trade, is also sexual abuse. There's a few names for the offenders of exploitation, especially when it comes to children and youth. So there's the John dates and tricks, which is adults who purchase sex from children or youth. So those are child abusers. There's also sex traffickers, or they're also known as pimps, and that's when they exploit children and youth and into doing sexual acts with adults. There's also a recruiter, which is a male or female who actively finds children for sex traffickers in return for money or other rewards. And last would be cappers. So a capper is an individual who tricks or manipulates a child or a youth into sending a nude photo of themselves. And what they do is they will screenshot or save the photo and use it to sell or blackmail the child or youth into sending more photos. So those are the offenders of exploitation, child and youth sexual exploitation. There's also stages when it comes to this, and there's 3 of them. So there's the lure stage, the trust stage, and the payback stage. So in the lure stage, that's when the offender pays special attention to the child or youth. They offer romance, money, cell phone, clothing, alcohol, drugs, or increase in popularity. This also makes the child or youth feel very pampered. They feel flattered, and by having a girlfriend or a boyfriend who spoils them. And this trust stage would be that's when the offender may try to pressure the child or youth into believing that there is a glamorous side of street life and saying things like "I love you" and engaging in sexual activity with the child or youth. And this is also the stage where the child or youth may disregard their parents' boundaries and become argumentative. They ignore their friends or their peers, and then they also exhibit sexual behavior. Last would be the payback stage, and that's when the offender may send a child or youth out on dates and say things like "you owe me," and use emotional and physical abuse. They use threats, and they totally control the child or youth. The offender may also force the child or youth to engage in sexual activity, and the child or youth may be completely separated from their family and support systems and be exposed to violence, be dependent on drugs, and forced to sell their bodies. At this stage is the child or youth would also feel trapped, they feel abandoned, and experience a lot of self-blame. So those are the basis of what exploitation looks like, especially when it comes to youth and children. And next week I'll be talking about how technology has a big role on exploitation, as well as the impacts of exploitation, child sexual abuse imagery, and as well as why do children and youth get involved in this. So I will be talking about those next week. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you then. Have a good day.